only one that we didn't have a chance to have a proper intro.
Yeah,
we'll
sorry.
do during the session. Nice meeting you.
Hi, Roger.
Hi.
Yeah. Nice meeting you as well. So.
Hi, Roger.
Yes, hello, hi, nice to meet you all.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the previous sessions. And I have no doubt that you realized, especially during the first session, how many times they have mentioned AI in the session. So it means they were kind of preempting ours. The way I would like to go is I will present the panelists with their background. Then I'll present myself. I'll present a bit of a background on the AI in our space. And then we'll kick off the conversation. We have no intention to run here a tutorial on AI, so nobody should run away. Try to enjoy the conversation. We'll try to keep it as engaging as possible. I'll start with you, Jeffrey. Jeffrey is the CEO of Asian Sky Group with 35 years of experience in commercial and business aviation. I think what is unique about Jeffrey is the fact that he's an engineer by background, and I have no doubt that he will have a very good insight into all the aspects of AI. I'll move on to our next panelist, which is Vinna Tsang, and Vinna is also involved in the private aviation, and she is a recruiting agency, and she's been in executive recruitment for the last 12 years, and she's got a pretty good insight of what's happening around the aviation industry. The next one, yeah, it's a long time. Yeah, it's on the panel. You're right. And actually, Roger is extremely familiar with all the cutting edge technologies being implemented around superyachts. He's someone that personally, I think, has been digging quite deep into the whole space of AI out of personal curiosity. We've been exchanging a lot of views about the AI market in the last few years. So I have no doubt that he will be a major contribution to our conversation. I'll give you a bit of an insight about where I'm coming from. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and normally I use the title of CDO, Chief Disruption Officer, because I'm typically looking at industries that needs disruption by implementation of technology. I entered the superyachting industry almost 8 years ago, and I realized that it's an industry which is really ready for major disruptions in very many disciplines. I picked a few of them, and the one that at the moment is really propelling extremely well is the whole AI for predictive maintenance. Predictive maintenance is something that exists in the world for at least 25 years, as long as Roger has been around. And predictive maintenance is actually the new way to go about maintenance, not driving the maintenance being reactive, the way it's mostly done in our industry, or preventive maintenance, which is age-based, but to go and really maintain based on the condition of the device. WinTech is developing the algorithms to be able to do predictive, and the platforms to be able to give the captain, the chief engineer, and the management company a very deep insight of what needs to be done truly in order to maintain the yacht running to perfection without any disruptions. I think that when you talk about AI, the aviation industry and the synergy between the two worlds here in our panel is absolutely perfect, because I think AI is the most implemented today in the aviation industry. GE is running AI predictive maintenance on their engines for almost 25, 30 years by now. Same as Rolls-Royce. And when you read the AI 100-year study by Stanford University based in the middle of Silicon Valley, and you analyze all the trends, you see how far deviation is ahead of everybody. I mentioned to my panelists that I used the example of NetJets. I'm not a shareholder and I'm not a user of NetJets, so I'm not doing any promotion to them. But it's a company, it's the biggest company in the space operating 750 jets. Typically, they used to buy 60 more jets every year. Maybe this year they'll buy only 25. At the moment, still during COVID, they were running 85% capacity, but this is a company that is 100% AI driven in anything to do with flight scheduling, crew management, recovering from disruption, routing, rerouting, positioning, utilization, optimization, and let alone the maintenance. Another company that's using very similar software platforms is JetEdge. They are very big in the larger cabin private jets, very much, I think, space that also Jeffrey is very active in this space. They are the third largest large cabin operator in North America, heavily utilizing AI exactly for the same disciplines. So we see that the AI is heavily implemented throughout the aviation industry. And I'll have to make a very sad statement that at the moment in our industry, in the superyachting industry, the utilization is touching zero. We're not there yet. And there is a very high level of, I would say, a combination of reluctancy and skepticism. Driven by
lots of opportunities then, right?
For disruption, as I said,
Yes.
Chief Disruption Officer.
Yeah.
And really what I want to do today may be to kick off the conversation as we are supposed to give our audience an insight of where the opportunities are. I think that we should start from the aviation industry. And Jeffrey, maybe we'll kick off with you. If you can give kind of a quick overview of your experience in your industry, maybe you can share with us some of it.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on certainly how it's used in the case of a NetJets. And I think what you forgot to mention when you mentioned NetJets and having 750 airplanes, the big issue is that they have no set schedule. So from one day to the next, they have no idea what their flight schedule is going to be typically, because they're all shared owners and they decide last minute where they want to go. And so, as you said, yes, where the AI portion of that comes into it is trying to sort out that mess. And obviously the algorithms that they've created basically to ensure that they satisfy all the needs of their clients, but do it in the most efficient way, so as in the most cost-effective way. And of course, it trickles down to the bottom line. But whereas it looks at schedule, it also looks at, as you mentioned, it also looks at, well, they have a huge, if you will, knowledge bank of the clients and what their preferences are and what aircraft type they may prefer and so on. So that all gets thrown into the mix as well. And this is where, as you say, AI tries to sort it all out and make sure that everyone gets what they want and everyone goes away happy. And so that's certainly an obvious application. Likewise, the predictive maintenance, most of the, if you will, top of the line aircraft coming out of the OEMs these days, it's not just predictive maintenance for the engine, but for the whole aircraft, all the systems on board. Again, the idea basically to detect the problem before it becomes a problem. And if you will, it let the maintenance facility at the destination know what that problem is, send them all the data so that they can then be ready when the aircraft arrives, if there is a problem, to fix it, or if there looks like there may be an issue, fix it. And that is all, as you said, done through AI. The other thing that is greatly used and will be seen more of is in the urban air mobility sector, where we're now starting to see eVTOL other urban air mobility type aircraft, and there's talk of those being autonomous, so they're pilotless. And so again, that again gets into an artificial intelligence situation where that whole flight will be governed by AI, and all the parameters that would need to be governed through that flight. And generally it's not a long flight because most of the flights are within a city center. But still, you can just imagine trying to navigate through a downtown core of some city center and doing that with no pilot. That requires some artificial intelligence, okay? And so typically that's where you're seeing AI and predicting maintenance events, predicting the condition of the aircraft and all the systems on board, and doing that in advance, predicting customer behavior. On the sales side, we're starting to use more and more AI to help us understand what our clients' needs are and respond to those. And again, that's sort of been forced upon us given the COVID situation where we're all working virtually. Well, now we've had to try to think of ways to put all that whole sales process that we had onto a virtual platform. And that then requires also for us to look at different ways of trying to predict what our customers' habits are going to be and what they want and how we can satisfy those. So that's all going across the board here in aviation. So
thank you, Jeffrey. Vinna, do you see requirements from companies in the aviation to recruit data scientists?
Well, I think for Asia, it's still relatively a small segment, small market, because the companies, normally have a less sizable organization, but they do, some companies do explore SAP SuccessFactors, for example, to have that system in place to help screening candidates that will help them significantly reduce the time to go through multiple, applicants, because there are so many positions available, right, at one single point in time. So yes, I do see some companies starting to get into that direction, but in aviation, specifically in Hong Kong, for example, because the size of the population is still relatively small. So not yet, but on a greater scale, I do hear a lot about from HR professionals saying whether there are systems out there that could help them in that regard.
Okay, that's interesting. Dominic, after all the amazing insights into the aviation industry, what can you tell us about the new build? Are we starting to integrate AI in the yachting industry?
Well, I think Roger will probably talk a bit more intelligently about that perhaps later, but I think that in the builds that we're working on, I would say that still my perception is that the tech side, the systems are almost, they're obviously not an afterthought, they're extremely important, but I think when we look at the process, its design, what does it look like, how does the hull perform, what's the interior going to be, what owner experience is that vessel going to provide, whether it's in an Explorer class or whether it's pure kind of med cruiser. I think that those things are still kind of predominantly the important factors, and we are seeing change in areas, like how are these things going to be propelled and driven. But certainly my perception is that it's not necessarily a priority perhaps across the fleet. And I think I've been thinking more and more about this, and what I think the problem almost is that there's no one answer to why yachting is probably behind aviation. I think one thing that is an important aspect is that a private jet is largely a tool, a business tool, and something that is used to get from A to B in a pleasant environment. It's not born as a toy. It's not born as a luxury in itself. And I think that that's a really important aspect of yachts, and why perhaps there's been a bit of a delay in adopting different technologies over the years. It's an old asset class. Going back to ships have existed an awful lot longer than planes have, and I do feel like there's almost a legacy there, that things get added generation to generation without necessarily doing that full kind of looking at it from a fresh, which people are doing now, but going back to the start and going, actually, we need to design something that has a whole different focus in its design, what's important when it's being designed, rather than just how it looks, what you can do with it. But yeah, I think there's a huge number of other factors, and one of them, I think, another element is and again we've touched on it ourselves talking previously, that is it owners? Are owners driving this? Are owners saying to their build teams, again, I want a yacht that does this for me, and it's then elements like the technologies being deployed, are they almost not necessarily being chosen so personally by the owners, and do we need owners who are really motivated by tech to be driving this? Or does it actually need to be that they're being advised by their build teams? Do you know what you really should have because it's going to save you money in the long run and it's going to be safer and all of this? Do we need those advisors saying to an owner, look, it's going to be beautiful, it's going to be functional, but actually this is how we can really improve the functionality? And finally, do we need to go one step further? Should the yards be saying, look, we want to be, deploying these, we want to be advancing how we build yachts? So there's an awful lot of players involved, and that's part of the problem, I think, in pushing these technologies. I was actually on the phone just before this call to one of our yacht manager clients, and I just sort of picked her brain quickly and sort of said, with the way that you guys work, and she said, look, anything that makes running a yacht, operating a yacht easier, we would embrace. So I don't think necessarily there's this is a sample size of one, I should just confirm, but I wondered before, is there this reluctance to people, I don't think people are afraid of losing their jobs like they maybe were a generation ago to robots. I don't think that's such a fear, but I do think that it's almost getting that message around every single player and being a bit more coherent in approach, so that yacht managers saying, look, anything to make our lives easier because we've got all this maintenance to do, we're worrying about moving crew around, we're doing all this other stuff. If there's a system that can just get one step ahead again, obviously, planned maintenance has been around forever, but I think that it's getting that message around is probably almost the biggest challenge.
I mean, as a yacht outsider, I'm surprised, actually. I mean, the first thing I was going to say to you guys was, but why? I don't get it, because a lot of yacht owners are aircraft owners, so you think they would be familiar with the technology on the aircraft side. And I just, for all the reasons you just mentioned, Dominic, I would have thought that having the kind of predictive maintenance and everything else, and just the systems that we have on the aircraft, having that incorporated in yachts, again, making them more efficient. I assume that means maybe having a smaller crew, having a, we always talk about workload management in the aviation industry, but likewise then in the yacht side, workload management and everything and so on. It would seem like an obvious sort of transfer over. Same clients typically. So again, yeah, my first question, I'd be interested to hear later from Roger and Joseph, of course, but why? Why is it behind? Because it really seems to me it's got everything going for it that you guys should be embracing this on every build you have. So
I mean,
Yeah,
one area that sorry, Roger, go on.
Jeffrey, I think that quite a lot of owners don't know how low tech the boats are that they're buying. There is so little information, and as we mentioned in our previous discussion, there is a lot of cut and pasting goes on. The yachts are customized, the service is personal from all of the crew on board, I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of education required. I think, as Joseph alluded to, there's a lot of education required. I mean, you mentioned that there's no set schedule with jets. As far as jets are concerned, it's almost exactly the same as a yacht. There's no set schedule with a yacht. So the yacht could benefit tremendously from AI, let alone on the technical side. Owners will just turn up with 6 hours notice. And it would be fantastic if the systems were all there such that they could, at the press of a button, be all prepared and everything ready to go. But that's all done by human interface at the moment.
Yeah, because I don't think it's a question of cost, is it? I mean, it's not a significant investment for the owner, is it?
No, typically not. I mean, the one thing that we find. Sorry, carry on, Joseph.
Sorry, Jeff. It's not about cost, and I think that we are one of the very last few industries on the planet that we haven't made the transformation from industry 3.0 to industry 4.0.
Right.
Aviation is going now to 4.5. We're not yet at 3.5. The whole digitization of the yachting industry is so far behind the curve. We still design and build yachts the same way it was done 20 years ago. They never heard about digital twins. when each and every flying object today is being designed and built as a digital twin.
Yeah.
So we are so far behind. We have to catch up. And this is an enigma because most of the yacht owners and jet owners are people that they do have great awareness of sustainability. And today's sustainability, especially post the 12 months that we went through around the world, is the biggest sign on the flag. And there is nothing better than utilization of AI to improve your performance, to save on anything and everything, to reduce fuel consumption, to reduce cost and expense, to increase utilization. Anything involving sustainability, it's all driven by us. So it
would seem to be an easy sell just based on what you said the benefits would be. And so, and not only that, for the OEMs, it's something that they talk about in every sale, and it's definitely, you know, they're always trying on the, you know, on the aircraft side, they're always trying to out tech the next guy. Okay, so it's, you know, the cockpits in the front end of the aircraft are constantly going through an evolution, and it's something that they make a point of sale. You know, it's one of their critical items, that because in the end, yeah, the guy in the back, okay, he really is into the design of the cabin and everything else, and he's into the connectivity, he's into the audio visual system on board and everything else, but he still has an ear though for the safety and systems and maintenance, because at the end of the day, what matters to him about the aircraft is availability. So if you've got something that makes sure that my airplane is available more often than not, I'm interested, because that's why I bought the airplane for. So
absolutely right. And I took in the aviation industry, every 10,000 planes generates 50 million terabytes of data. Roger, I mean, think about this data lake of 50 million terabytes data per annum. Generated by,
that's a lot of servers somewhere.
Now,
so, but now I've been onto your website, Joseph. I mean, I did try to get prepared for today's panel, and so my understanding is you're kind of at the pointy end of this business, trying to bring that, if you will, digital systems on board yachts, right?
We are architecting a platform that will enable the predictive maintenance on the whole. The difference is that aviation is pretty homogeneous. When you have an airplane model, a Boeing 737 is a Boeing 737 when they fly. Okay.
Yeah.
So
no, I get what you mean.
But,
yes. Yeah.
So it's that they are the same. The problem in our industry is, as you go upward, each and every super yacht is completely different from the other,
including engines, right?
Everything.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Everything.
Navigation system, communications, you name it. Everything's custom made, right?
Absolutely. And this is the challenge for us, because what we need to develop is very advanced AI platforms that we will be able to do a lot in the edge. We need to be able to take learning from one type of, let's say, pump, and to be able to use the machine learning that was developed for pump A, for pump B, C, D, E, because they're all different. You cannot the lack of ability to replicate it makes life much more difficult. And before, and I want to go to Roger, the big issue was that we couldn't go into the cloud. In order to run a high quality AI platform, you need the cloud support, because otherwise you need to build on-prem cloud, which is very expensive, and you need very capable IT people on board, which we don't have. So Roger, maybe you can give an insight of where we are today, the evolution of satellite communication, supporting it.
There's lots of new, as there always are in communications, lots of new technologies coming along. And we've been working with developing some ideas with Joseph as how to actually get the data off the boat, wherever the boat is, anywhere in the world. And with the advantage of some of the LEO constellations, satellite constellations coming around, there is now much more of an opportunity for us to actually extract the data from the boat and deliver it to the big servers for the digital twins for feeding, because they're basically Joseph's technology needs to be fed with data. It needs to be fed with data, not only to build up the library of the equipment, whether it be a pump or whether it be a SATCOM or whatever, but to be able to create the digital twin, the ideal digital twin, and then to be able to compare the data against it. So we're working with some LEO ideas at the moment, LEO satellites, where we can, there will be these LEO satellites are orbiting satellites, and they're transiting from pole to pole, much closer together when they're nearer the poles. And we've got a number of passes every 24 hours where we're able to collect 2 gigabytes of data off the boat, and machine data off the boat, every time it passes over, and feed into Joseph's systems. So there's and that would be absolutely now anywhere in the world. And then utilizing that communication technology to feed back to the boat data that they want, such as films, movies, that sort of thing, an exchange of. So there's lots of new ideas and lots of new technologies around to enable this to actually happen now. Because as Joseph's saying, every yacht tends to be unique in terms of the kit that it's got on board and how it works.
Now, in the yachting industry, I'm interested as well in that, for us, connectivity, if you went back maybe 3 years, was okay. I maybe have to have it, I maybe don't. But nowadays, it's an absolute must.
It's as important as the water that the boat floats on now. It really is.
Yeah. Okay. So it's the same.
I think one of our owners once said to me, he said, good communications, is the main excuse I need to get afloat.
Yeah.
Dominic, I want to go back to you. I have in front of me a chart of aircraft management. Maybe it will sound familiar to you. What is included in aircraft management? It's the in-flight services, the safety, the maintenance, the crew, the charter sales and marketing, the owner services, the flight coordination, and the accounting. Does it sound like the same as in our industry, in the yachting industry, identical?
I think that my view of the yachting industry is there are providers that will cover a wide spectrum of services, but one of the issues I think that certainly I recognise in having a sort of rollout of these newer technologies is that the management of a yacht can be that much more fragmented, and that there's not sort of that operator element that I think there is in the aviation industry, where the operator the way I see it, if I were to own a jet, I don't need to think about it. The operator is going to basically make sure everything works. And I think that with yachts, yes, there are providers. There's a provider for every way you want to own your yacht. Whether you want a really bespoke personal service that they're managing 1 or 2 yachts and will utilize other service providers to assist with the crew element, with whatever else there might be, all the way up to the large service providers who frankly will hold an owner's hand from the moment they want to buy a yacht to the moment they want to sell it. And I think that range in service provision, and also again, the yacht manager I was talking to before the call sort of mentioned her perception is that people are not so willing to share in the yacht industry as perhaps they are in other industries, and people maybe keep their cards a little bit closer to their chest about what they're doing, who they're working with, how they do stuff. And I think that's just another element, and it's built into the industry, I suppose, that it's a cultural change that needs to maybe happen, that people go, actually, for the greater good, we need to work together to roll out these systems. And it's, as I said at the start, there's no one answer to this, but I would say that yeah, the average yacht, there's probably more different players involved in the operation of that yacht than perhaps is the case for a jet.
No, I think
Yeah.
the issue of transparency, this is a key issue. It's not for our panel, but I fully agree with you that it is difficult in our industry. And I think that the aviation industry, and maybe it's the whole regulations are much more stringent around the aviation industry. And still, when you see the evolution of the maritime industry, and now all the efforts to create the autonomous container ship, because at the moment, if you look, and Jeffrey mentioned autonomous planes, we have at the moment in the yachting industry, the maritime industry, two main areas. One is the autonomous commercial ship that I believe we will be there in 2 to 3 years. There is a lot of progress being made that slowly the big container ships will become autonomous, and they will be able to travel with very limited crew initially, and down the road, they will be able to be without a crew at all. And there is the initiative to try and develop a fully autonomous yacht, which is called the MAS 400, initiative that started in the UK as a JV between startup and IBM. And they are building a fully autonomous yacht that will cross from the UK to New York without any intervention of human in the sailing between the UK and New York. Now, we're not there yet, but we're heading there. And in every AI system, we looked also, today there are so many technologies involved with externality that didn't exist before, that we can go and scan the surface of the water and identify objects from plastic islands that might affect all the different seacocks on the hull, issues of floating logs, sunken containers. You can identify all these hazards in the water with digital warning systems based on artificial vision. It didn't exist a few years ago. Today it's there. You can optimize your route based on weather analysis, currents analysis, wind analysis. You can save 2-3% on your fuel consumption. This is sustainability. We can do it, but it's not being implemented. And again, we will.
Synthetic vision is pretty much standard in all the top-end airplanes.
Yeah.
Enhanced vision, thermal imagery, then superimposed on a synthetic view to give you a combination of all the different ways of seeing outside of the aircraft. And it's pretty much standard in all the top-end airplanes these days. Everyone's got it.
And I think it really is a matter of education. And to come with a completely different example, I drive a Tesla now, and I love my Tesla. And when I'm driving along, the monitor is showing me everything around me. And it's not doing it because I need that. It's a distraction, if anything. It's doing it to show me that the car knows. It's doing it so that I, as a driver, know, oh, actually, it's already seen that cone. It's seen that car. It knows it's a red light. So that in another generation's time, you know, I'm not worried about a driverless car or a self-driving car. And I think it's educating people that, you know, a lot of people still feel like our eyes are better than a computer's eyes are. And you know, anyone who develops tech will probably say, you know, a computer is reading more things than you could ever read in a lifetime every second. And I don't know specifically, but we're still suspicious. We still like the idea that I'm in control, or I'm looking with my eyes, even though actually, whether it's a jet, a yacht, a car, nowadays they're looking a lot more proactively, a lot more holistically, and a lot more, and they're processing this stuff a lot more quickly than we can. And we need to learn to, I think, trust in these systems a bit more, as not as individuals, but as a body of people.
Yeah,
but Dominic,
I think.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Vinna, go ahead. You didn't.
Sorry, No, I just want to say we have been discussing more on the technical and operational side of things, how AI can enhance the efficiency, perhaps reduce costs, you know, per se, yachting and aviation. But I think a common platform across the two industries really is client engagement. where, you know, where the data comes from, right? If you talk about aviation, in-flight services, as you mentioned, Joseph, part of the aircraft management deal, where my previous life as well in aircraft management, pretty much relies on the client service staff and also the cabin service staff to feed data into the system, right? In terms of what your owner's preferences are. So without that piece of data, you know, AI is meaningless in our industry. So I think more so is what for us to think about is, you know, how can we actually gather those intelligence, you know, into the system, feeding to the system, and then, you know, really utilizing, maximizing, you know, the AI, you know, technology to enhance our customer experience. And I think we talk about human touch as well in our previous discussion, isn't it? Because human touch, I think it's what's the owners are expecting us to still have, you know, not replacing, you know, a face-to-face meeting or, you know, a phone call, for example, hearing a live person talking rather than, you know, talking to a bot, right? So I think that probably is the future, but, you know, what's your take on that, you know, in yachting and in, I guess Jeff would also have some insights as well with virtual conferencing and things like that.
Roger,
yeah, well, I mean, from my knowledge, I have a lot of colleagues who work on yachts, crewing on yachts, and engineers, ETOs, captains, and you know, one of the things is very much, Vinna, is the personal touch. There are certain boats that I know that the owner will only take his time on board if a particular engineer of the two on rotation is on board. It's a personal thing. It's not anything necessarily technical. They're both equally qualified, but that's the way that it works. And I think that's something it's irreplaceable for a number of owners. You know, going back to what was said originally, is that I think Dom said, you know, that at the end of the day, initially, we've yachts are basically a hobby. They're a toy. They're a luxury. They're not a tool. And whilst they're that, the personal input is necessary. But however, it doesn't mean that in the background everything can be automated, which a lot more than it currently is at the moment. Which, you know, at the end of the day would mean there'd be less downtime. Owner will be able to make more use of the yacht. There'd be no loss of charters, etc., etc.
I think that the challenge that we have today, and this is what's coming from our conversation, no doubt that the evolution must start from the shipyard. There is no way to go and to educate the 7,000 superyacht owners one by one and to teach them that this is the way forward. The same in the aviation industry. The aviation industry is propelling itself all the time really to the cutting edge. It's all driven by the OEMs. And I think that the challenge of our industry, Dominic and Roger, really, this is our challenge, is to convince the owners, the boards of the leading shipyards that they must start propelling their shipyards forward and integrate advanced technologies step by step. But eventually, it will get to the level that it's being utilized in your industry, in the aviation industry. We are light years away from there. We are not even, we haven't done step one. You're at step 10,000. So we have a gap to close. Hopefully we can make it.
But some of it comes from the regulators though too. I mean, we're getting pushed by the authorities to make sure, and I know Lorna's appeared, so that must mean we're coming to the end. Okay.
I'm afraid so.
But, I mean, I'd love to say the OEMs are the single source, but it's not. I mean, it's also the regulators as well. So the authorities are constantly pushing the industry to make sure they've got the best of the best of the best.
Lorna, do we have any questions?
No, I think you must have answered everyone's questions because it's gone strangely silent, but I think that's been a very thorough discussion. So thank you very much, Joseph. And I think we really will have to wrap up there anyway. We've got another panel lined up.
Okay, so yeah. We're on time. We're on time.
You're on time. You've done very well. Full marks. So thank you, Joseph. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
for
you,
that
everybody.
very
Thank-
interesting discussion and for
Thank you,
joining us
guys.
today.
Hi, Paul.
Apple.
Nice to see everybody.
So
Got the
Please
Hong
keep
Kong
the
crew on
question-
here. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
all the Hong
please
Kong-
keep the questions coming in, everybody, for the next panel. As you can see, we've got Paul Jebberley there, also in Hong Kong.